You're listening to The Health of Business, where we talk openly and honestly about what it takes to run a healthcare clinic business in BC and Canada today. I'm Danielle Boyd, and I'm glad you're here. Neil, thank you so much. I'm really excited to finally actually have a one-on-one with you, because I feel like we've been in the same circles for a while, and having these group chats and all these different conversations, but it's nice to actually get some time one-on-one with you and to learn more a bit about what you do and your role within the clinic and also within the PABC board. So I'd love for you to just kind of give me a bit of a background. Who is Neil? What does Neil do?
Perfect. Well, thanks for having me on the podcast as well. So again, my name is Neil Nijjar. I've been a physiotherapist since 2012, graduating from UBC. I primarily stayed in private practice. Throughout my time, I've kind of worked at different various clinics. I've worked kind of with local youth level sports as well. And now in the last few years, kind of a bigger role with BC Wrestling. But from a professional standpoint, I was managing River District Physio with my friends Vic and Grinder, and now we've actually opened a second location called Physio District out in Langley. Actually, and when I say just opened this week.
Whoa!
So yeah, so
Congrats!
first week's, thank you. Being a little bit busy, just kind of running around, getting things set up and just kind of organizing everything, but it's really nice. We've got a little bit of a team behind us that's been kind of helping put everything together. So this is a little bit of a soft open this week, but we're hoping as the weeks go on, we'll be kind of running full board. And then, as you mentioned, from an advocacy standpoint, I am a PABC board member for this year. This will be my first year on the board. Prior to that, I was the chair of the private practice committee for PABC, and I've also been on the Sport Physio BC executive committee as well for a few years. But as you were chatting about, I'm going back to school in September, so I'll be dropping my sports committee just because I don't have enough time to be on all these committees, boards, work, and go to school at the same time. So,
Oh my goodness, that's a huge load. And amazing. It's just so cool to see people like yourself who are so involved and active. I mean, not only with the clinical realm, but also the advocacy and the profession. So congrats on the new clinic. That's so
thank you.
exciting. And how great that you were able to fit this recording in the same week. That's
Yeah,
that's huge.
you know what? It's just like with any new clinic, it takes a little bit of time for clients to build up. So I'm around the clinic anyway, so I had a little bit of free time this morning, so I'm more than happy to hop on.
Amazing. Well, thank you. I think we must have overlapped at UBC for that very brief span of time when you were at the end of your program, because I started in 2012 at UBC. So we must have actually overlapped at UBC very, very briefly in that
Yeah,
couple months.
so it was like 2 months where kind of all the MPT grads are on the way out, and then the ones are on the way in.
Exactly. Yeah. So you would
Yeah.
have been on placement. We never probably were in the same building at the same time, but yeah, funny. So we would have had a very similar experience going to school. So that's wild. So tell me a bit more about your role within River District and now District Physio. I want to hear a little bit more. Yeah, because obviously you have a clinical role. You're still seeing clients, but you are very much involved in the leadership there. So what's your role within this clinic there?
Yeah, so mainly my role kind of with both offices. So with River District, Vic and Grinder have been kind of kind enough and open enough with a leadership position that I kind of get a full behind the scenes look of the office in terms of operations, everything in the background. So my role is kind of a little bit more operational than it is clinical and front facing. So uh, myself and Big and Grinder, we kind of make all the decisions around policy, procedure, hiring, marketing, rates, advertising, all that type of stuff. So I've always had kind of a full behind the curtain look of how the clinic runs, how the clinic operates. And now with Physio District opening, I'm a part owner of it. So it's kind of the same kind of concept and setup. And we've been really lucky that we've not only been able to pull staff from River District over, so we've got some kind of continuity there, but really being able to pull all the systems and procedures and all the back end stuff over as well. So it's really kind of easy and seamless in the sense of we kind of, use the same decision making process. We use the same kind of data driven kind of numbers and things that we look at that we can just kind of drive over this way as well.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, that's just it. Like the 0 to 1 is always the hardest one because that's when you're putting the systems in place, you're creating the, procedures and policies, et cetera. But once you have those established, going from 1 to 2 is a much more seamless process. So yeah, drawing from that and probably like iterating on it as well and being able to modify and improve and, change things just in specific ways that are maybe more custom to the new location. So that's really like that's amazing. Congrats. I'm sure you've had like ups and downs with it, but I'm sure it was a much more seamless process than 0 to 1.
Yeah, and I think kind of like you said, this clinic is going to be unique from the other clinic in a sense. It's a completely different geographical location.
Mhm.
It's, starting from scratch, those type of things. And when we did kind of first open and work through River District, um, it was a lot of just making stuff up as we go, type of idea. I always kind of say like physios were great clinicians, but we're terrible business people. I've been lucky to have a little bit of kind of business experience kind of in non-physio related things. So I was able to kind of pull from some of that experience and stuff. But again, it's just one of those things. I think traditionally our profession never made decisions from a um, data driven or a proactive approach. It was always oh crap, someone quit. I got to just hire somebody to put someone here. Or hey, someone gave me a resume. I'll just hire you for no apparent reason.
Yes.
Whereas with us, we try to make kind of our decision making, a little bit more purposeful. And it kind of it goes hand in hand with like treating, right? Like it's really easy to treat and just give an exercise for no reason or just do manual therapy for no reason. But if you have a lot more why and driven rationale of why you're doing what you're doing, that patient's going to have better outcomes. And same thing from a business perspective. If you're making decisions based on reason and rationale, the business decisions are probably going to pan out better in the long run.
Oh my gosh, you just absolutely nailed it. Like I agree 100%. Like physios are not I think a lot of physios go into school with the intention of ultimately owning a clinic, but there is no business being taught. I mean, like from when I was in school, when you were in school, I assume it was probably the same. Like it was like an after school, person who came in to teach us an hour's worth of like financial literacy that like you could attend and was not mandatory. And yet so many physios become either clinic owners or they end up taking leadership or back end positions within clinics. And so there's really a huge gap. And you're right, so many owners end up making decisions because they're putting out a fire versus being proactive versus analyzing the data. Like there's just so many pieces of it are, oh, I'm going to start this clinic. Great. What's everyone else doing? Okay, great. Cool. Everyone's direct billing. Let me just set up my direct billing systems without actually analyzing whether that is a good decision for the clinic and for risk and for finances, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So I think what you've done by creating data analysis and, systems and like things to observe, like you're ahead of the game, clearly. So yeah, I'm curious, like what are your, like, what systems, what operations, like anything specific that you are like an expertise in? Like, what is your, like, which of those domains? Like, do you like the financial driven data? Are you someone who looks at like, the client KPIs? Like, where is your domain within the operations and systems that you excel in?
I think for myself, it's the kind of client KPI data, which obviously that's going to blend into some of the financial stuff. It all kind of, in the grand scheme of things, you can't really separate these things because they're all intertwined. And again, I think people sometimes try to separate things like, oh, hey, I don't really want to be too salesy, so I'm not really going to focus on the financial side of things. Or, hey, you know what, if I just focus on the client side, the finances will kind of take care of themselves. So I would say it's more kind of on that client KPI side because I think a lot of the decisions that you have to make as a business, end of the day, it just comes down to do you have enough business or clients type of
Yeah.
idea. So it's one of those things if you're hiring someone or you're have a clinician who's asking for more hours, one, you want to make sure, do I have a client base for said clinician? Two, hey, does this clinician show me that they've done a good job of managing a caseload and building a caseload? I always kind of say, you know what, certain clinicians I might kind of add their schedule more hours, more days, more quickly than a different clinician. It's not because I've got a difference in patients. It's just, hey, where is that clinician from a caseload building standpoint? And
Right.
sometimes caseload building and skill set are two different things, and we kind of again try to lump them together. And again, if you're really good clinically, don't get me wrong, your caseload will just naturally come. But some people who are a little bit more raw in their case, on their skill set, can still be really good at developing a caseload. So it's one of those things. I think for me, it's more just kind of understanding the dynamics of the clinic in whole, and then being able to apply that understanding into whatever scenario that is.
Totally. And it sounds like also just like really understanding your staff and understanding them kind of at a, like a holistic level. Like, okay, what is their clinical skill set at? And what is their case management set at, and like, what is their capacity? Like, are they burning out quickly or more quickly than other staff members? And, just really understanding and probably spending a lot of time sitting with your staff and learning and, kind of understanding their needs and their abilities and putting that together holistically. I'm curious. Yeah, you mentioned the difference between like the clinical skill set and then the like case management, case building skill set. What would you say? I mean, obviously, like the clinical piece is something that we learn through a variety of courses, and those are taught, in that realm. I'm curious to know what you would consider as like essential case management or case building skills. Like, where do you like what skill set needs to be fostered to make that something that someone is successful at?
I think from a couple of different aspects. Like one is I think sometimes clinicians forget the actual like physiological timeline side of things. So if someone has a acute injury, well, how long is this acute injury going to take? And then just kind of mapping it out for the patient, right? So I'm not a big person of like, I know sometimes clinicians like doing like treatment plans, like, oh, hey, like for week one, you're coming 2 times, for week two, you're coming 2 times, but more so just giving this broad explanation of, hey, this acute injury is going to take 6 weeks. Over the 6 weeks, at the beginning, we're going to see you more often. At the end, we're going to see you less, and we'll kind of tweak it as we go type of idea. So really just understanding the physiology of injury. But then more so, I think it's, I've kind of been telling people like our industry, we're turning into, yes, we're healthcare, but we're a service. And people need to understand how to provide a service. So some of those caseload building skills come in how well can you provide said service. So how good are you at building rapport, getting the patient's trust, explaining what the plan is, and then very simply just telling patients, hey, make sure, let's see you next week at Tuesday at 4 o'clock, right? And just kind of guiding it that way. And if end of the day, I think a really easy way to build a really strong caseload is just do what's best for the patient. If you just do what's best, and we talk about physiologically, and even if we take into all the other considerations we have to take into consideration, you'll find the caseload will build type of
Yeah.
idea, right? Whereas sometimes I find clinicians are like too scared. They don't want to be salesy. So they're too scared to be like, oh, hey, book for 6 weeks in advance or book for 2 weeks in advance or what it is. Or you hear a lot of see how it feels and come back. And one, it's terrible for your caseload, but two, you're actually doing a disservice to the client because you're actually not helping them through their journey that they have to get through type of idea. Because again, we're the experts. So the clients are relying on us to educate them about when do I need to come back? How often do I need to come back? And again, if you just tie it purely to, we see professional athletes get care every single day. We don't need to give patients care every single day, but it just shows that like you need to make sure you have some type of continuity of care, not just a see how the weekend goes and then check back on Monday if you need to. Because that's where you find a lot of patients are like, I tried physio, it didn't work. Oh, what did you do? Oh, I went once. The physio said, come back if you need to. It still hurt, so I didn't go back. Right. So
Totally. And patients don't know what need to means, right? Like they're going to kind of be like, oh, it's hurting and just use pain as their only indicator to go back, right? And it's like, if a doctor prescribes a course of antibiotics, you're always supposed to take it till the end, whether your symptoms are gone or not. You're always supposed to take it to the end, right? So if they're only using pain and how they feel as a indicator to go back, they might not get the full course completion, right? Like their pain might be gone, but we still need to like bolster with strengthening or, whatever specifics you're working on. It's going to be something that needs to be seen through the whole way. And you're absolutely right. Like so many physios are really afraid of being salesy and being like, hey, I need to see you 3 times a week for 6 weeks. Like, but explaining to them why and that physiological, like scientific baseline for why that is important and what's going to happen over those 6 weeks if we're compliant, is actually a better sales technique anyway than just being like, hey, you need to come back in for 6 weeks. Explaining why is rapport building, it's relationship building. And so giving people that like physiological scientific understanding of what's going to happen over this time frame, I think is way more like, it's a way better sales technique anyway, because it's what's going to happen and people understand and see it from that lens.
Yeah, and I think it's also like like sometimes I find myself educating therapists as well, where it's kind of saying, do you really want this patient doing the same exercise and having the same activity modification education given them for 2 weeks? No, you probably want to progress them and kind of guide them through their activities and those type of things. And would you rather the patient just trial and error on their own or do it through your guidance? Well, probably do it on your guidance. Well, you can only do that if you tell them to come back. And
Yeah,
sometimes the best like caseload building strategy is reminding therapists to explicitly tell clients to come back, right? Which it sounds so simple and sounds so easy. But again, talking to our front desk staff or even just like listening to therapists, them working, you get a lot of this vagueness of see how it is in a week. Maybe next week if you need to. If you feel that it's not better, you can come back. Like this very kind of vague terms. Where again, a lot of people they're coming to you for your expertise and like you give the example for medical doctors with antibiotics, like people will kind of listen and follow your guidelines. Not
yeah,
everybody, but if you give them a clear plan, they're probably willing to work with you. And on the flip
totally.
side, you also don't want to kind of shift that so far that you're just bringing in people, 3 times a week or over treating in a sense as well. But I find everybody's so worried about over treating that we're actually under treating, right? Because we're so scared of being that person that, hey, I don't want to be that person who's over treating and bringing people in all the time, that we swing
Yeah.
that pendulum way too far the other way.
Yeah, totally. You're absolutely right. And like I hate to throw Kairos under the bus, but there is like there is that kind of perception that, chiropractic sales techniques have, stereotypically been quite like you need to come back every 3 weeks, blah, blah, blah. And so perhaps as a form of almost like pushback or, attempt to not look like that. Yeah, exactly. People are becoming wishy-washy in their treatment plans as a result. And if in a week from now it's still not feeling better, that person might not be able to get into my schedule, like that's the thing. I would rather have that person booked in and then cancel it because they don't need it than be like, oh, shoot, I can't actually get you in. I'm, fully booked. Like, it's actually just better practice to have them booked in regardless to have it. And, obviously cancellation policies are a thing too. But, I would rather them have the booking. And then, if something happens that they come back in, and then you're like, actually, I think we could probably shorten this treatment plan by a week. You're doing really well, like modify on the fly, but have it in place first.
Yeah, and I think that's the other key too, is like not getting so attached to what your initial plan is, right? So I always kind of tell people, hey, if you get better, we're going to be able to follow this really nicely. But most people don't follow this perfectly. For some people, we need to add more visits in. Some people, we got to take visits out, and we just got to find what's going to work for the individual, right? And again,
Totally.
I think it's sometimes you see online, you see different people preaching that you should have these like built in, get the patient to sign the contract. I don't think we need to be that firm. That to me gets very salesy. But
Yeah.
again, I think it's just about giving your clients a clear expectation, a clear vision of what this rehab journey is going to look like. And that can
Yeah.
be for I mildly sprained my ankle yesterday to I had a major surgery joint replacement as well. And again, I
Yeah.
think if we just kind of lay it out for them, they're more than happy to follow. And I know some people always say, well, I don't know if this patient can afford this. In my experience, the majority of the time, if there's a financial barrier, the patient's going to tell you. They're going to say, hey, there's a financial barrier here. I can't do this financially. And then, I always kind of leave it to our clinicians. Like you can problem solve however you feel you want to problem solve. If you want to offer a discount, if you want pro bono sessions, if you want to get them with more of a home program, virtual check-ins, whatever it is. But don't just assume someone's going to have a financial barrier if they haven't told you. Because again,
Yeah.
yes, people's health plans are limited, but I think more people are putting value in their health and well-being, that people are willing to spend those funds on their health and well-being as well.
Totally. They wouldn't be presenting to your clinic if they weren't interested in going through the process. And they're going to understand that this is likely going to be an investment, whether it is like so many people just self-discharge when they're done their treatment plan, or sorry, not their treatment plan, they're like allocated funds. And so I think that is on the clinician really to be like, we might actually go beyond your allocated funds. Are you okay with that? Or do we, and you can kind of include that in your treatment planning. Maybe you meet a little less frequently, but have, a more graduated program for home. And knowing that upfront and kind of having that discussion as part of your treatment plan is probably a good idea as well. But yeah, like I think if they're presenting to the clinic, they're coming because they want a treatment plan, not a treatment until I can't afford it anymore, obviously within
Yeah,
reason.
and I think, part of it also comes to, I think the way that therapists are kind of guided in school is all these other factors don't really play a role in their case management in school, and then you come into real life and it's hard to navigate those things, right? And I think the easiest way to navigate these things is the path of least resistance of just being like, oh no, that's okay, like don't worry about it, yeah, we're good,
Yep.
right? Compared to having some of these conversations that might be a little bit more challenging or require, again, using the word sales, you yourself to kind of sell yourself and the service that you're providing. And that's where I kind of remind clinicians, like, again, we are providing a service because even from a competition standpoint, if I don't give you a good patient experience in the clinic, what's going to stop you from going down the road to the next clinic, right? So
Exactly.
as much as we have to kind of explain everything and lay everything out, we still have to provide good treatment. We still have to provide good service. And I think clients now are becoming aware of differences of different treatment models and techniques. And okay, what did I just pay my 30 minutes for? Did I pay for a more passive based thing, a more active based thing? And we can sit here and argue which way is right or wrong or that whatnot, or which business model works better. But at the end of the day, these patients are becoming customers, right? They're people that are looking for a service and they want to make sure they're receiving value for said service. So again, it's kind of all that kind of intertwines into how am I gonna create this patient experience? How am I gonna first and foremost help the person through whatever they're coming in with, but to do it through a positive experience that they're gonna see the value in coming back and using their hard-earned dollars on the service that you're providing.
Exactly. And it's so interesting because these factors, like you said, are not necessarily integrated at school. Like we're not considering the financial aspects. And the other big one is the emotional aspects. Like so many of these injuries, like especially car accidents, come with, a lot of emotional turmoil as well. And so managing that as part of your case, the finances, and then of course the physical injury that we're trained on. But there's a huge intersection. And you're right, like it is actually a service that is being delivered. This isn't just like generic physiotherapy. Like people are going to shop around now, and there are clinics and clinicians that are doing all these advanced trainings and needling and neurokinetic therapy and all sorts of like amazing courses that are out there and advancing their practice. And so that's the clinical skill set. But you're right, there is this element of like understanding that people are exchanging money for your time. And I don't think that that is instilled at the school level. Is we're taught to be clinicians, but we're not taught to be service providers. And that service is obviously the clinical part of it, but also the exchange of money, the emotional aspect of working with people, like building rapport with patients, relationship building. I don't know if schools changed a lot, but I find that's a big that's a big factor in it that I don't think I even truly understood until, several years into practice. It was actually this thing that like people are coming back to me, maybe for my skill set, but probably more so for the fact that I'm listening and I'm educating and I'm spending quality one-on-one time with them. At least that's what I'd like to think. But it's, I think there's a lot more to it than just the clinical skill set, and clients feel that, clients know it, and they shop around for it now.
Yeah, and I think even myself, I remember, oh, this is probably 6, 7, 8 years ago now. I had a client that I was working with, and I just hit a wall with them. I couldn't get them beyond where I had them. So I referred them to a friend of mine who worked at a different clinic. I said, go try this. His style's a little different than mine. Just let's try something different. This just isn't working. So referred the client over to my friend. friend touched base with me saying, hey, we've been working through things, making some benefits. Awesome. A couple weeks later, the client books back in with me. And I was like, oh, like, why are you back? I've been talking to the other physio and they're telling me that you're doing better. Oh, I just came to tell you that, like, thank you. And like, I am getting better, but I still wanted to be your client. And I was like, that's
Oh,
great. I appreciate that. But go get fixed first. And then if you come back for something else, like your ankle hurts, we can deal with that. So I think it's, showing that, the value of I really care and give a shit about your care, where I'm going to find, I always tell clients, my job is to make you better or figure out a way to make you better type of idea. And if I can't do it, I'm going to find
exactly.
somewhere else. And people get so worried about like, oh, I'm going to lose that. I'm going to discharge that person off my caseload. How's that helping my caseload? It's going to come back in tenfold because for the next injury, they're going to come back to you, or they're still going to refer to you, or maybe they're going to stay there, but they're still going to be referring clients to you. So again, when it comes to this providing the service, I think we have to find the balance between making sure that we're providing a good enough service, be it if it's one-on-one, be it's not one-on-one or whatnot, but it's that give a shit factor. You still have to give a shit about your clients, and if you can show your clients that give a shit factor, you're going to get that buy-in right there, right? So even I had a young cricket player yesterday, and I was just chatting with him about, this is the plan, this is what we're going to do. And he said, hey, this is really nice. And he's a young kid, 19, 20 years old. And he's like, oh, my last phase, we just felt like once we were done, it was, okay, see you later, see you Monday type of idea. It felt very transactional, whereas this
Yeah,
feels like you're actually trying to figure stuff out. I said, yeah, like that's my job. That's what we do, right? And again,
exactly.
when I asked him what type of stuff that other physio did with him, it sounded like good treatment. There was manual therapy, there was education, there was exercise. It sounded like they were getting good treatment, but I don't think the client felt that he was getting that service aspect of it. Um,
Hmm.
and again, it's I always kind of say like, you know, as much as our skill sets are different, we're all kind of giving the same exercises. We're all kind of giving the same education. Sure, our manual skills can be a little bit different, but if you're needling a trap and I'm needling a trap, we're doing the same damn thing. Well, what's the
Yeah,
difference? It's that service, it's that experience portion thing, right? And that's what's going to differentiate clinics.
a
Not so
hundred
much of
percent.
this like I learned the best technique for releasing a trap. No, you just dug your elbow into a trap. It's the same. It doesn't make a difference. It's that other
Exactly.
soft skill portion of things.
Exactly. And that soft skill is so much harder to teach and to acquire than the clinical skills. There are many ways up the mountain. I can stick an elbow, I can stick a needle, I can do whatever sort of fancy, treatment on a trap to get it to release. But at the end of the day, if that client doesn't trust you and doesn't feel like you give a shit about them, that service is not the same and they're going to shop around. And,
Yeah,
I think at the end of the day, that leads you right back to your KPIs and your financials, right? Like if the service that is being delivered is not worthy of a client coming back or trusting their practitioner, that's going to reflect in your financials, right? Like that's the full circle right there. And
yeah.
the best way to get great KPIs, great financials is to deliver good client care and service.
And some of the clinicians that we have in office that are really good at building caseloads and are really busy and booked weeks in ahead, um, generally speaking, they care a lot about their patients. They're really good communicators. Their skills are good, and it's all that stuff together. And it's to the point of those are the type of clinicians that if they ask me for extra shifts, yeah, no problem. You can have as many shifts as you want. You can work 12 hours a day for all I care because I know you know how to manage these people, build these people, develop these networks. And we go over and we kind of have some KPI reviews with staff, and we'll kind of just talk about different numbers and different metrics and values that we're looking at. And some of them that, especially some of the more senior ones that have now developed really good caseloads, I tell them there's nothing for me to tell you. You understand how to do this, right? And I think the other side of it is what I learned is like I can't just have one metric or value and put that across to everybody because
Mm-hmm.
everybody's treatment style is different and their philosophy is different. So if I'm have this certain value that I am saying I'm going to apply to you, apply to me, apply to the next person, well, that I'm also assuming that we're treating the same or we're getting the same type of population or our concept of how often to come back is going to be the same. So what I realized with some of our staff members, hey, you're always going to be on the lower scale of this. but that's not because you're not doing good. That just means that's your treatment philosophy and that's just what works for you. So I know I've got to modify my targets and goals for you based on your treatment style. Whereas other
I love
people
that.
treat a little different. So end of the day, it all kind of averages out. And it's kind of funny. We've got this one metric, which is basically just it's average patient visit. And I've got this number that I target. And then every week we track it. And then I did an average of all 52 weeks. And to zero point zero 0.01, it hit our metric, our goal metric by just zero point zero 0.01. And it's just one of those things of like, again, we had to tweak it for every individual because every individual
Mm.
based on their schedule. Like we had one therapist who was working 2 days a week. Hey, it's really hard to bring people in more than twice a week when you only work twice a week, right?
Exactly.
Or they had some other commitments and were only working once a week for a period of time. Yeah, guess what? It's really hard to tell people to come back in 3 days if you don't work for 7 days. So I can't
Yes.
say you're not meeting the metric. That's just I gotta adjust the metric based on your schedule, your philosophy, and these type of things. So again, it's like those like little tweaks. And I think again, if you make these data-driven decisions and you look at these things, if you just look at the number, you're gonna say, oh, therapist X is doing terrible. No, they're doing actually really good. The limitation is actually somewhere else. And you got to take that
Yeah.
limitation into consideration.
So I really love that, like making custom KPIs for your staff, because you're right. Like so many people are trying to, hit certain goals that just don't align with their treatment philosophy or their schedule or yeah, like absolutely. So that's really cool. And I'm curious to know, like, what are some of the like exact things that you are measuring and how are you customizing them across your staff?
Um, when we first started, I was measuring everything, like everything I could possibly think of. I made up equations, I made up values that were like algorithms and stuff. And now it's really simple. I basically break it down to new visits, uh, total patients, total visits, and then average visits per week. Just
Mm.
simple as that. I just want to make sure there's enough new patients being filtered into people's schedule just to keep caseloads alive, and then just making sure that they're retaining appropriately. And then even our
Yeah.
retention numbers, uh, I always kind of say, like, if you get 10 random patients, some of them are going to have to come once a week, some are going to have to come twice a week, some are going to have to come once a month, some are going to have to not come back after their initial consultation. That's just the nature of people that you get. And if you average that all out, well, what is that number? And
Mm.
now how can I take that number and make that my target number? Whereas if you want every patient to come twice a week, well, now you're just pushing everybody to send everybody twice a week, right? And again,
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things of, we base our numbers actually on what we think is best care, right?
Mhm.
And by trying to do it on best care, we work the numbers backward, and that's where we got our value that works for us. And again, that value might not work for every clinic because you've got a different business model, you've got a different treatment model, you have a different patient population that's coming in.
Yeah.
We're
Mhm.
very low on ICBC, WCB. So we have a very big
Mm.
private caseload. So in the private world, you just don't see people coming in 2, 3 times a week like you would with WorkSafe or whatnot, because sometimes these people have limited funds or they're got to work and they're not off work due to their work injury. So whereas if we were a heavy WCB, ICBC caseload, I think that number would look different as well, right? So
Totally.
it's just one of those things that we really dumbed down the numbers to just 3, 4, 5 important things, and that's about it.
Yeah, I love that. So do you have a background like in data, in, like math, or what is your background there? Because obviously
No,
like to be able to create these kinds of algorithms
yeah,
requires that.
no, I've always been a numbers person. Like in high school and stuff, I guess I was good at math or whatever. But like my background, like I've got a kin degree from UBC, and then I did physio at UBC.
Yeah.
My family's always kind of been in different business and stuff. So talking to some of my relatives who are in business, or I did some kind of non-physio related ventures while I was a physio. So I think I pulled kind of some of that information, but I've always been very numbers driven. Even actually, I'm a big sports guy, and I don't know if you know the
Ah,
movie Moneyball, baseball, where they kind of
yeah,
pick the baseball players based on stats. That's basically me.
I
So I think
love
it's
it.
kind of my love for like stats and numbers probably came more so from like sports. and then just kind of translate that into the physio realm and the
I
business
love
side of
it.
things. Yeah.
I love it. Well, and I mean, as we know in Moneyball, it worked really well for them. So
Yeah, hopefully it works well for us. We'll see, right? So yeah, no,
totally. Oh,
it's good.
that's hilarious. We have literally the exact same background. I did a kin degree at UBC as well and then went to physio. So we've been in the same
Same
kind of journey
circles.
that
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, exactly. I love it. So this is really cool and I love I just love hearing the inner workings of a clinic and everyone does it differently and yet you're right. Like it is kind of the same beast. So I love it when, someone can break it down and be like, these are the three most important things to measure. And you've clearly got that nailed within your clinic. And, I think that's really amazing. And then are you using, so I mean, it's hard to have that data if you're hiring someone, right? Like you can't have that scorecard for someone if you haven't met them before and when you are hiring. So I assume, you're part of the hiring team. What are you looking for when you are hiring someone or bringing someone onto your team?
So with the new clinic, we've been bringing staff on for the new clinic, and our clinic manager, Kiera, even just from an admin standpoint, because we kind of use this philosophy across the board. We did a bunch of interviews, and then after we were just chatting, and she goes to me, "We're still hiring on vibes, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, we're still hiring on vibes."
Love
Because
it.
for us, we kind of say like we're after the person and the individual rather than the skills. Because especially if we talk about new grads, yes, new grads are different and people have better skills here and there, but generally speaking, they're kind of the same. They're coming with the same training, education. Some of them will be a little better in certain aspects, a little better in other aspects, but they're all kind of the same. So really at that point, I'm after that individual, right? So I want to see, hey, are you a good communicator? What are your short-term goals, long-term goals? What kind of drives you? What type of person are you outside of being a physiotherapist? So we always kind of hire based on an individual rather than
Mm.
skill set. And even if that's a tenured therapist who's coming from a different office for whatever reason, be it if they're
Mm.
bringing a caseload or not a caseload, I don't really ask them, hey, what's your caseload like at the other clinic? It's again just trying to get to know that person. And again, from a hiring perspective, we've got different markers and values we look at before we decide to hire. So part of me kind of knows, if I bring in a good person, I know there's going to be enough clients that we can probably foster this into a good caseload. And if that, let's say that hire starts struggling with the caseload, can we problem solve why? Or if they're, again, a really good communicator, good at developing these relationships, building rapport, they should build that caseload quite quickly. So again,
Yeah.
sometimes I find clinics kind of just hire because somebody gave a resume. Because again, we're in a hiring shortage, so some people hire out of fear
Mhm.
of if I don't hire this person, no one will come. But again, I think it comes down to making sure that we're hiring based on a decision making process. And our decision making process for hiring is more about the individual than anything, because the data driven stuff, we got to do our data driven stuff on our side to make sure it's even appropriate to hire. And then from there, we're just after the best person. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another really great point is making like a lot of people hire because they just want to have more bodies in the clinic and more rooms filled. But looking at those numbers, like, do we actually have a big enough wait list or do we actually have demand at this time of day? Are we, are we actually even going to be able to bring in the clientele to fill that caseload is a huge one, right? Like so many people hire and then they're like, okay, great, now go build your caseload. And it's like, well, now that person, might not actually even have patients. So yeah, like looking at the numbers before even considering a hire, I think is super important. And I love hiring on vibes. It's so true. Those soft skills are what are going to help someone. Like they can go take whatever courses and learn whatever skills, like skill sets are acquirable. They're clearly intelligent enough to learn new skills. If they got into physio school, they completed physio school, they have that designation. They're clearly intelligent and they can learn and acquire skills. But you're right, that soft skill piece is not always inherent. And that's something that's what you want to snag when you hire someone.
Yeah. And even for us, like we've got at River District, we've got an acupuncturist, and we're a very kind of
Mm.
rehab focused clinic. So sometimes acupuncture doesn't really fall and mesh well. I would have never thought we'd ever hire an acupuncturist. And when I believe it was Grinder who spoke to him, he's like, we just have to hire this guy. He's just a great guy. And Daniel is probably the nicest human being I've ever met, and he probably fits
Oh,
best in the clinic. Although, he's older and he's kind of explored the world, and like you wouldn't really think that these two worlds really mesh really well together. But again, we just brought him on and he brought his service on, and he's been one of the greatest additions to our team. Even though it was a service that we never thought we would bring into the clinic. We were never kind of thinking of, hey, what are these outside the box? We've always been very rehab focused. But again, it was just, hey, he was just such a great person, and again, that acupuncture caseload's built up, and that's gone really well, but also meshed into the team really well. So again, for us, the hiring on vibe standpoint is kind of our big mantra. It doesn't matter if it's clinicians, if it's admin, because again, from a clinician standpoint, we can mentor, we can help, we can teach, we can facilitate, we can foster skills. That's kind of our
Totally.
job as leadership at the clinic. I can't teach you not to be an idiot sometimes, right? So,
Yes.
and sometimes, because we haven't been ready, we've flat out told people, sorry, I don't have a job. Not because you're not a good
Yeah.
person. I don't think I've got a caseload for you, right? So,
Yeah.
um, or even in the past, because we like pairing people and we want to know,
Mm.
okay, if I'm bringing a new person on, where do I want to put them? Not just blindly say what days you're available. And the days that we wanted to pair in didn't work with that patient or that person's schedule. So we weren't able to kind of bring that person on at that time, because it's kind of like, okay, I know you want to work these days. I just don't think these days are going to get busy. If you work these days,
Yeah.
I know these days will be busy. And there's different factors. Who are you working with? How many therapists are on? What days are the busiest? Those type of things.
100%. And I think that's really commendable because it's so easy just to hire because you have availability. So, personality fit, schedule fit, like all these things are so
Mm-hmm.
important when considering it. And so it's a really hard thing to turn a therapist away when they've applied. But, if it's going to be in the long run a better decision for the clinic as a whole, that's what you got to look towards is like, in a
Yeah.
year from now, is this going to be a good fit?
And it's also one of those things, I think it's about transparency, but also being honest with and respecting your team. Whenever we
Mhm.
hire someone, there's always this nervousness of like, oh, why did we bring more people on and those type of things. And like we tell whoever we bring on, it costs us like $50 to hire somebody. We're going to get some business cards. We're going to give you a t-shirt. It doesn't cost us anything. But I want to make sure you're busy and we're respecting your time, but we're also not like just diluting everybody else either, right?
Yes.
So I think
Yes.
a lot of just kind of trying to be transparent with your hiring process procedure, because again, if we're transparent, I think it puts our current clinicians' mind at ease as well. That like, okay, by bringing this person on, that's not going to just ruin the whole busyness of the clinic, but also it kind of shows that person of like, hey, you know what, we're bringing you on with a plan, right? And
Yes.
again, the one thing I always show people we hire, I'll show you the schedule. I'm not scared
Mm.
about it. I'll blur out the name so we don't have to worry about some privacy stuff. But here, go look at the schedule. And here's the days that I want to put you, and here's the reasons I want to put you there. And typically, if you're just transparent and upfront, I think it just starts that relationship on the right side. Where sometimes in our
Yeah.
profession, I don't think there's enough transparency, and sometimes there is this, oh, you're going to be busy. Oh, yeah, you'll be full. Oh, yeah, this. And then you're there and you're just like, oh, you know what? This isn't as busy as I thought it was going to be. So,
Totally, totally. And I think there's a lot of like sales tactics that are used to try to hire physios and poach physios. And like, I think that happens a lot more than actually just looking for those personality fits, fit, like,
yeah.
and really working to see if it's going to be a good mesh.
And I hate to say it, but I think our industry is built on a lot of empty promises of, hey, there's this, I'm gonna do XYZ, but not always does XYZ come through. Sometimes it's just one of them,
Yeah.
sometimes it's two of them, but sometimes it's none of them, right? And I think over the years, be it wherever I've worked or friends have worked or people that I've seen or friends that own clinics, you see people that have kind of made decisions or brought people along with certain expectations, and those expectations don't always get met. And again, there's different
Yeah.
reasons. Sometimes, hey, it just didn't work. It's just a square peg in a round hole, is what it is. But sometimes it's also kind of like, hey, you know what? This decision that you made, was this actually a decision made with purpose or a decision made on the spot type of idea?
Totally. Or the purpose just being purely financial or, maybe not
Yeah.
the most integrated decision purpose making process. Yeah, no, I like it's so interesting, like having worked at a couple of different clinics and like going through, the hiring process and then eventually like ultimately opening my own space and growing the business. Like it's really eye-opening when you kind of see it from like a higher level and you're like, oh, I actually wasn't hired because like I was hired because they just like wanted to fill a spot, not because
Hmm.
of whatever. And I'm like whatever, the experiences are what they are, and I feel grateful that I've had my my own experiences through different clinics. But you're right, there's so many empty promises, or just so many like, we're going to get you really busy, and then you actually arrive and you're not that busy and you're like, okay, what are you doing to get me busy? And they're like, oh, you actually have to go and deliver your business cards to the doctors next door. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's not what I was promised. And anyway, there's been, yeah, I have
Yeah.
lots of those types of
And,
stories,
and
but
and I think I think everybody's got those stories, right? And like the one thing we always say is that there's a reason me, Vic, and Grinder, we work a reduced clinical hour schedule, because as we even tell people, like, okay, if I was working 40 hours a week, I've got, the different boards I'm on, I'm going back to school, I've got two kids, when am I going to be around to actually support you and mentor you and do these things? So,
exactly.
one of the reasons that we work the schedules we work on, kind of these more reduced hours, is so we're around to actually fulfill some of the things that we said that we were going to try to do. And sometimes that's supporting the front end, sometimes that's supporting clinicians, sometimes just being around. What I find with a lot of younger therapists, they early in their career, they just really like to have someone around to just bounce ideas off of, double check things, and just talk to someone, right? Like just knowing someone's around in case they've got a question. And sometimes my day is spent, I'm just at the clinic, just hanging out, and during that
Yeah.
hangout, I've, talked to one clinician about their life plans. I've talked to another clinician about some cases they've had a hard time with, and another clinician asked me to come into a session and test an ACL for them. And that's fine, right? And,
Yeah.
that's totally it. But that's kind of, I think as a leader in a clinic, that's kind of part of your role, is just making sure that you're available. Whereas
100%.
if you're treating back to back to back to back to back for 8 hours, and then you got to rush home to your kid's soccer practice, and then you're gone for the weekend for school, like it's just hard to be available, right? So,
Exactly. Now you're just the absent clinic owner slash clinician who works in the business versus on the business, right?
mhm.
Like, and I think if you want to be in that leadership role as an owner or in leadership or whatever that looks like, I think you're right. Sometimes it is just being available so that someone can like pull you aside and be like, hey, can I just chat with you quickly about this? Or hey, can I bounce a clinical idea off of you? Or like, hey, is there any way we can like talk about my shift? Or, just being available as opposed to like having to schedule that out and like feeling really formal around it. Like being around and being available just fosters trust and relationship with your staff, right? Because now you're available for those same types of conversations that you would be having with your patients that are, a little bit like less formal. It's just sort of like, hey, like, here's the plan, or like, is that going to work for you? Or like, some dialogue versus it being transactional too, right? Like it's in-house relationship building.
Yeah, and it's the same, like you said, it's the same idea with our patients, right? Like, I know in our industry, everybody talks about hiring and retention of staff is a really challenging part. And we've been really lucky. We've actually, like, our staff at River District is like 20 clinicians, and the last three clinicians to leave all left because they were opening their own practice, which they told us up front, type of
Right.
idea, right? So
Yeah.
we've been really lucky that we haven't had a lot of that turnover. And I think part of that is us as owners and leaders providing that same value of service, right? So it's kind of like, if you kind of just look at it from a, hey, how am I best going to value my staff, value my patients, value all these things? That's where your caseload retention is going to come in. That's where your business retention is going to come in. We
Yes.
haven't we haven't lost or changed an admin staff in 2.5 years, 3 years, which even admin turnover is always a big thing. And I think it's just about making sure that we're not just focused on our clinicians, we're also adding that value and service to our front end team. Because as everybody knows, a good, robust, steady front desk team makes life a million times easier, right?
Right. And those are the ones that actually are like require so much more onboarding and training. Like clinicians obviously need onboarding and training, but generally, unless they're a new grad, they kind of have an understanding of like how clinic life works. But if you're training someone new at the front desk, that's a huge, time and energy investment to get someone caught up on how to run Jane or like interact with patients, answer the phone. Like there's a lot more training that comes with that piece. So having low turnover in that area is like essential. That's a really big part.
Yeah, and again, it just comes down to having those same, when we are making decisions around front desk, be it if it's hiring or hours or this or that, there's that decision-making process compared to just this person applied, they're a warm body, I can teach them, off we go, right?
100%. I mean, I hear you. I think that's huge. And again, looking for that like soft skill personality fit is going to be a
Yeah.
huge,
And,
huge
and
world of
again, for
difference
us,
there.
just it's the vibes, right? Like, are we getting a good sense of this person? Because again, when it comes to front desk skills, again, we can teach a lot of this is how you use the EMR, this is how you bill, this is how you book. But again, like I said before, I can't teach you not to be an idiot, right?
Yeah, like don't be an asshole is a really hard one to actually like
Yeah,
integrate.
yeah,
So I want to shift gears a little bit. This is all super helpful in the like, clinic leadership piece. I love learning just the like nuts and bolts of how a clinic operates and like makes decisions. And I also want to switch gears into the advocacy piece and talk a bit about your role within PABC and where you see the profession going, because I know that this is also a really big passion for you. So first of all, congrats on your new board position.
thank you.
I think you're so fortunate as a profession to have you on the board. So congrats and thank you for your service. Yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about, I mean, obviously you've been involved with PABC much longer than you've been a board member, but yeah, I'm curious to know kind of about what your journey with PABC has been and why you're so invested in it.
Yeah, so my first kind of step in with PABC started around COVID. There was some
Mm,
COVID protocols or some messaging from PABC. I remember that like didn't make sense to me. So I ended up getting a call with the CEO at that time, who was Christine Bradstock. And me
mhm.
and her had a call, and she's like, "Oh, these are great points. You know what? We have a committee position. Would you like to be on a committee?" And I was just like, what do I have to do? And then she said, there's just meetings, and these are the types of decisions and things that we talk about. So that's how I first got kind of connected with it was called the Business Affairs Committee at that time, which is basically just private practice committee. And really, my big thing at that point was our profession's really slow to change. I feel like our profession is 10 years behind where it should be type of idea. So my big thing was helping the profession move forward, especially from a private practice lens. And there's a lot of things even currently in our profession that is so far behind where it needs to be. And I just felt like I wanted just to be a voice that we could help move these things forward, right? So either that's things like MSP billing rates, which are way outdated, or some of the other advocacy pieces. So again, my time with that business affairs committee, I ended up just being a member to vice chair to chair, and then from there, kind of board was kind of a next kind of logical step. And my goal really, quite simply, is just how can we best move our profession forward? Be it if that's going to be scope of practice increases, be if that's going to be how our profession is viewed outwardly within the medical community or just to the general population. And again, just trying to get a way to get our fee structures a little bit more robust and in line of where we should be. But generally speaking, it's one of those things. I think under previous leadership of PABC, I think we were very status quo and we were very happy being status quo. So the nice thing I really like about Andrea and Sean and the rest of the team at the office now is they're more than happy to push the envelope and move things forward. And I always kind of say, my big goal is to either make change in the profession in a positive manner or get kicked off trying, right? And sometimes I feel like I'm getting closer to getting kicked off, and sometimes I feel like I'm getting closer to making change. But it's also one of those things that I've learned, like, I think people get into advocacy for different reasons or board positions for different reasons. And when I talk with my friend circle, I always kind of say, like, I'm not here to make friends. I'm not here to please people. I'm probably going to say things that are going to piss people off, and that's okay. I think the really big thing is, as physiotherapists, the industry is changing so much, is we actually need the policy to change with it. And it's hard for the industry to evolve if the policy is going to hold us back. So
Yes.
that's the really big thing there. Because even from like a scope of practice standpoint, I know everybody, really wants to get imaging and what that looks like. I think if we look at our healthcare system and how our healthcare system is basically falling apart in front of our eyes, we have to get creative with our healthcare system. And one really easy way is finding professions and can we get them in non-traditional roles? Well, physiotherapists, can we get us into non-traditional roles? And can we expand the scope to kind of help alleviate those things? Because really that's just going to allow us to provide a better service to our clients as well, right? So
Yeah.
I know scope's a big thing. And on the flip side, if I'm being very honest, we live in a very expensive society and city, and it's one of those things that we should be compensated accordingly. Um, I can think of 100 different ways to make more money than being a physio, but I really love being a physio, so I got to try to make it work type thing. But it's just one of
Right.
those things of just, finding that balance. Because I think, especially now being on the clinic owner side of things, people always kind of think, oh, you run a business, you own a business, everything should be great. As clinicians, we're kind of capped what we can earn. If you go to your
Yeah.
dentist for an hour, they can bill hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for that hour. As a physio, depending what you charge, you're talking about $150 to $200.
Yeah.
So again, our earning potential just isn't as reflective as these other professions. Not saying we need to make as much as dentists, just saying we need to be able to make more than what we're currently making. I feel like the average salary of a physio really hasn't grown in my 13 years of being a profession, um,
Yeah.
as it should have, right? So
100%. And the cost of living and operating a business have skyrocketed, as we know. So, yeah,
yeah,
that has like done, that. And yeah, like I always feel like, like I remember like being in school and it felt like the average physio was probably making like low six figures, like that 120K a year. I don't think physios make more than that now. And that's 12 years later. So, yeah, like I feel like even though the price of physio has gone up incrementally, it's that the expenses have got like physios have not gotten a raise. And so, I've
yeah,
written a 5-part piece for PABC that's coming out over the next several weeks about why we need a raise and how to do it. And I've got this, very loud and obnoxious and strong voice piece coming out. So I'm excited for you to read it. I think you've probably had previews on it, but hopefully we can move the needle on that because I feel very
yeah.
strongly about it as well.
And it's also one of those things, I think our model of care is also detrimental to making more money because
Yes,
as our fees have gone up, that's great. But if I'm only seeing one patient in an hour, I can only make my 1 hour fee. Whereas if my model of care was 4 people an hour, well, now I can have that times four or a lower number times four, which will be bigger than the 1 hour, right? So as much as we're going to
exactly.
this one-on-one service and more clinicians are going to the one-on-one service, um, the billing isn't reflective, right? If anything, like I said, it's capping us faster, even though
Exactly.
we're
Those are
providing
the
better service. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And that's just it. So the clinics that are making more money are the ones that are seeing more people an hour, but aren't necessarily getting the service that, but it's lower per unit, right? So someone might come in for 20 minutes and only pay $75. But, if you want to pay $200 for an hour, you're actually going to get way better service. But it's cheaper to go to the place where you're like, in there for 20 minutes, or you might be there for an hour, but you're doing, 75% of it unsupervised. So yeah, it's the model of care has shifted, right? And so to deliver quality care, we almost have to take a pay cut, right? It's this, and it's interesting you mentioned the dentist too, because we bill per unit of time, whether we're needling, whether we're doing manual therapy, whether we're exercising, like but whereas dentists can bill per unit of service delivered. So if they're doing a cavity replacement, that's going to be a much higher unit of billing than just doing a general checkup versus, like a cleaning or doing fluoride or whatever, like adding these different pieces allows them for higher billing, right? So is it like, oh, if we needle, we can bill a higher unit, but the insurance companies only do it on units of time too, right? So you're right, the policy and the model isn't in alignment with, like, it's all just units of time, right? So that's what we're confined to, and there's only so many hours in a day. You can't scale hours in a day.
No, and it's also one of those things like I've talked to some other friends who are in ownership as well, and sometimes they jokingly, not jokingly say, "Hey, I should just go to the volume model. Like I would just
Yeah.
I would be more financially successful," which is true, right? Volume, like you said, your example of 20 minutes, 75 times three is more money than 200 just as 200, right?
Exactly.
Um, it's just simple kind of math. So it's that tricky balance of trying to find, how can we find a way that it's kind of a model of care doesn't have to be sacrificed for a model of income type of idea.
Exactly. Exactly, right? And so I think, yeah, it's a really important conversation that we have at PABC and with government and with insurance companies because you're right, the model needs to change and the policies, like that's just it. Like the policy has always been we bill per unit of time. And so in order for us to adapt and grow and evolve as a profession, perhaps that's a model or a policy that needs to evolve with these changes, right? So I am with you. I think the new staff at PBC are doing an incredible job and opening up these dialogues. And I think the community just feels so much more engaged now in these conversations and more invested as a profession. So I really think the direction is evolving. And so like I'm really excited about what's happening in the profession right now.
Yeah, and it's nice to see a lot more people being informed and engaged type of idea. Because again, I think our profession for such a long time was just very like, I don't care about that. I'm just worried about my little clinical bubble, and I'll kind of go from there. And
Mhm.
I think, especially if we look at these things with like ICBC and all these other things, yes, they're a pain in the ass, but it's also, we need to be informed and advocating about these things as well. Whereas in the past, it was just, you just kind of took it lying down type thing,
Yeah,
right? So it's nice to kind of be
exactly.
able to kind of give a little bit of pushback. Even myself with my role with PABC, I've been kind of meeting with ICBC on a regular
Hmm.
basis along with Andrea and Sean, and it's one of those things of sometimes those conversations are really well and they're really good and they're moving things forward, and sometimes we're just talking in circles, right? And I think that's the challenging part is all these different things that need to be changed. Everybody, including myself, wants this change now, but it's such the slow process. And again, we're starting from so far back. It's kind of
Yes,
like if these things had been happening over the last 5, 10, 15 years, maybe we are a little bit more forward on that continuum, but we're even when we talk about MSP, we're negotiating $23. It's been $23 for 20 years. It's not like we're trying to
exactly.
negotiate 73 to 93, right? Where,
No.
maybe 73 to 93, the government's going to be really, really open to. It's going to be really hard to tell the government 23 to 93. Um,
Yeah, because now you're looking at a 300% increase versus a 25% increase, but
yeah,
it's
I,
not changed in how long?
no,
23
and,
years.
and again, just one of those things that I feel like, unfortunately, our profession was starting from such a behind pace that it's going to take a lot of time. And sometimes I even say, hey, I'm probably not going to be a physio when some of these changes happen because again, government's really slow and it's just the nature of it. But yeah, we'll see.
100%. And I think, yeah, like we've seen that happening over the last several months, like year and a half since, the new staff members have come in. But you're right, like physios have always generally been a pretty like relaxed, chill group of people. And so insurers, government, they're not used to pushback from physios. So it's an interesting, shift that's happening. Like we are pushing back against these terms. We are pushing back against the fact that Pacific Blue Cross and other insurers don't want to have PTSWs covered. Like we are pushing back against these things, and I think these insurers aren't used to it. And so the really cool thing is we've like actually established relationships, and again, it all boils down to relationships and like conversation and trust and like rapport building. And so I think gathering the steam in the physio profession and community has been really incredible because now they're looking at us maybe a little differently. Like we are pushing back against things. And I think ultimately, in order for us to have some of these changes, to have MSP rates go up, to have fees go up, to have expanded scope of practice, we need to change our public perception of physios and have, public government clients, people in the community see physio for what it truly is and the value that we truly do provide instead of kind of this thing that's like, oh, I'm hurt, I should go see a physio. It actually like we're shifting the perception of it. And in order for these changes to happen, that perception needs to be elevated and the profession needs to be, exposed and to be shared with the community for the extreme value that we do provide. Because yeah, like we are the people that, you hurt your shoulder, yeah, you go get it checked by a physio, but we're also keeping people out of emergency. We are making diagnoses. Like a lot of people don't even realize that physios can diagnose most MSK issues, right? So I think having people see us as this more like elevated profession is going to go a long way to having some of these like fee policy, etc. changes.
Yeah, and I think on my side too, it's kind of nice seeing some fresh faces that are trying to push some of this policy stuff forward because again, I've been practicing, 12, 13 years, and for a long time it was kind of the same faces and the same voices with the same conversation. Um,
Mhm.
and it's kind of nice over the last few years, we've seen some newer faces kind of popping up that are helping push that envelope forward type thing. Because again, I think, there were always similar people that kind of had the same messaging. Like when I first started with PABC, which now it's still on my to-do list, is to get a intermunicipal business license system where I just one business
Yes.
license, because we see it in the construction industry, so there's already a model for it. And I remember talking to previous levels of leadership, and the answer I got was, oh, that's going to be really hard. I was like, well, just because it's hard doesn't mean we don't do
Doesn't
it,
mean we don't do it.
right? And again, I think there was always this kind of, oh, we don't need to rock the boat. Everybody's kind of happy doing what they're doing. And I think that's where we also started seeing this decline in like PBC membership and people wanting to be, because again, they didn't see this value, which I can't blame them. Even, not as just a few years ago, people would say, hey, why should I be a member? And I had a really hard time giving them a reason. I'm like, yeah, you're right, right? Because
Yeah.
again, like some of these policy changes that we're going to make, it's not like the policy change is just for the members. It's going to be widespread. But again,
Yeah.
it's one of those things of like, with some newer faces and people being around and new leadership and all those things, I think people are starting to see more value in
Yeah.
some of these things, which again just kind of helps strengthen our position, right?
Totally. And I think it takes, like for me personally, it took like, having my business like all but upended to become a much more active member because previously I was kind of like, oh, what am I getting? I don't know, like whatever, I'll pay my dues because I want my cheap insurance. But having, such an insult to my business as a result of the PTSW changes was like rallying for me. But I think another really interesting thing is there seems to be a huge set of newer grads that are really active. And I think it is one of those COVID silver linings. A lot of them got caught up in the licensing mess and they became very vocal and very active because of that as a result. And so I think we're seeing a huge number of, the grads that were in that like 2020 to 2022 range, or the people that were in school at that time who had the boat rocked and now, are interim licensing. Like there's been a lot of things that have kind of happened and changed in the profession as a result of COVID or insurance audits or these new terms and conditions. And so it seems like there's been kind of a series of events over the last couple of years that have really woken people up. And as like shitty of an experience as it was to have these, changes in coverages from PBC in my specific example, and as shitty as it was for these people to have that exam system break down, it's instilled a fire in people. And I think that passiveness that we were used to seeing is changing because members are like, I'm a brand new physio. I can't even work. What is going on? Like I can't like I can't write this exam, and now they've taken away the interim license. I can't work. This is a mess. Why did I bother going into the profession? And I think we have a lot of really big fires ignited, which not that I like, seeing people go through like really shitty experiences, but I think for the profession as a whole, it has lit something up in the community.
Yeah, and I think also on that same note, like there's just a lot of low-hanging fruit that we just weren't going after, and I think a lot of these, again, having these people in the community that are bringing up these low-hanging fruit, it's easy for us just to pick these things off and get them done with. Like I know interim licensing, like you mentioned, I know there's a big conversation, and I'm hopeful that there's going to be some forward progress with that soon type of idea, but at least there was someone to bring it up, to bring it forward, right? Because part of it
Yeah.
is as well, like if there's not members bringing concerns forward, it's hard for us as an association to act on these things, right? So if there's not
Exactly.
someone yelling and screaming about this issue, we're not going to know about said issue and be able to deal with said issue, right? Whereas in the past, I think there's just a lot of like apathy, like, oh, that sucks. Oh well, is what it is. I'll move forward. But having, like you said, this generation of no, that's not good enough. Like this needs to change.
Mhm.
At least now we know what are these issues that are affecting the membership. What are these issues that's affecting the profession? Okay, how can we move forward? And some of them are really easy. hey, we can make this change in a matter of weeks and months, and other ones are, okay, this is going to be a bit of a long haul, but at least we can kind of move forward type of idea.
100%. And I think it really helps having, leadership at BC Physio so open and so inquiring, right? Like there's always forms and call outs and, like Sean's launched his new app where we can all chat. Like they are so wanting to be involved and to gather this information and proactive about collecting it. Whereas before it was very much a like, I have to approach them and like, initiate the conversation. They're initiating and I love it. And they're initiating in like so many sectors and so many projects and so many things that it's like almost overwhelming. Like, where do you even start? Where do there's so many meetings and I just like, I love it. I think it's so amazing I really truly feel like for the first time in 12 years, I'm getting my money's worth at PPC.
Yeah, I used to joke around the best part about being like a CPA member was the sport check discount. And the
Yes.
sport that can't be the best part. Yes, that's a nice
No.
perk, but that can't be the best part. And even with
Oh,
oh, when was it? I was actually part of the group that was doing the interviews for the new CEO position when we hired Andrea. And I
yeah.
remember one of the questions was like, hey, how are we going to bring value? And then my point was like, yeah, right now the biggest value is this stupid discount, which again, it's a great discount. I like it. It's fantastic. My kids
Yeah,
get
don't
soccer
take it
teams.
away. We like
Yeah,
it.
but it can't be the best part, right? And that's the big thing I think with the association now is I think we're starting to make these changes and make these differences that okay, the sport check discount isn't the best part, right? Which is good. Which it only took 10
It's
years,
just an
but
extra bonus because I still like it. I still like, don't take that sport check discount
yeah,
away. Like going in there and getting, yeah, that's the best part. When that email comes through, I'm like, great, let's go. Atmosphere, sport check, off we go. Get all our camping
yeah,
gear, get everything
yeah,
sorted.
absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, I know we both have clients coming up here soon, so I want to wrap this up shortly. But I would love to kind of end on an optimistic note, and I have one last question that I ask everyone, so I'll save it because I have one more question before I ask my last question.
Sure.
Where do you see the profession heading? Like, what is your ideal? Like it's 5 years from now. What would you love to see the profession look like in 5 years from now?
I think I would love to see physios as like healthcare leaders, right? So like right now in the healthcare system, I think we see physicians as the healthcare leaders,
Mm,
and nurses are starting to kind of creep into that conversation. But I would love to see physios be in that conversation of healthcare leaders. And again, that might be in non-traditional spaces like the public healthcare system, in emergencies and those type of things. But a leader in the sense of if you have an issue, your first idea isn't, oh, I need to go see my doctor. It's, I'm going to go see my physio, right? Which
yeah,
well, obviously within our scope, but I think for us, it would be one of those things of can we become the leaders in healthcare type of idea. That would be my,
absolutely.
5 years from now.
And we are primary care providers, and I think so much of our perception right now is as allied health, and that's not to say allied health is like a slight or anything. Like allied health is absolutely important, and we're lumped in often with RMT, chiro, acupuncture, and not to say those are not important healthcare providers at all. Primary care is a different story though, and we are primary care providers and we diagnose and we do these things, right? So there is that elevated perception that I believe you. I think we should be in line with physicians, nurse practitioners, and nurses, and really be thought of as that first line of care. And the cool thing is, so I've actually started working in the public system in urgent care, and it's the shift is happening there. I'm the very first physio at our North Shore urgent care facility here in Kamloops,
Oh,
and it's been
nice.
a really incredible experience. Obviously, expanded scope of practice would make an incredible world of difference. If I could order a bloody X-ray, it would make things a lot less redundant there. But the goal really with urgent care there is to shift that perception. So I am boots on the ground and I am trying to make that happen here in
Wonderful.
Kamloops. And I'm really excited about it. It's just a casual position for now. But yeah, it is really cool. And I believe the same as you. I feel really strongly about elevating the perception of physiotherapy because I agree. I think we are primary care providers and we should be, kind of perceived as the first place to go for anything orthopedic.
And especially
Um,
with our skill set and our knowledge, and again back to where our medical system is like. not only do I think we need it as a profession, but I kind of think like the medical system needs it as well, type of ideas. So
Yes.
hopefully at some point in my career. Yeah,
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
yeah.
So the last question I ask everyone, because this podcast is called The Health of Business, how would you describe or define a healthy business?
I think a healthy business is, can you create a sense of community, right? And that community is going to be within the business of the people that work there, be it if it's your admin team, your therapy team, that type of thing, but also the community that you create with your clients, your network, your neighborhood, and those type of things. So I would say, a healthy community would be the way I would describe a healthy business.
Oh, I love that. Mic drop. Neil, thank you so much. That was amazing. I know there's way more that we could continue to chat about, so we'll have to do a 2.0.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
That's it for this episode of The Health of Business. If you're navigating any of these challenges in your own clinic, know that you're not alone. If you're interested in working together on any of these challenges in your business, head to danielleboyd.ca to learn more about my consulting offerings and to get in touch. Catch you next time on The Health of Business.